Half pound.
Yes, I didn't say. What are you looking so sad about, Cap?
I'm surprised. I mean, I'm really insulted. That's not right, what you just said.
What do you mean, what I just said?
I mean, I'm getting a drink of water. I'm late getting home, but you talk. I said something about the greatest heavyweight champ, man. I'm a hometown man, and you talk about Joe Louis, man. Joe Louis wouldn't be nothing for me. Joe, I tell you, Joe, do you think you would have stood a chance with me?
Well, Clay, one time during my career, I went on a Formula One tour.
I would have been a bum compared to you.
What's happening, my people? It's Cat Sports again, back for another afternoon with the family. That's right. You know what time it is. If it's Monday through Friday, 2 p.m., it's the Boxtorian, bringing you all that boxing history. Boxing is the greatest sport of them all. That's why we love it. Can't get enough of it. Miscast, Mike Mazik, the Boxing Menu Podcast Plus. Salute to everyone, and welcome to another episode of Cast Sports, the Boxtorian. Today, boxing history. How's the family today on this Tuesday afternoon? Still early in this week of boxing history. Got started a little late today, so we're going to jump right on into the highlights of boxing history. We're going to talk about the referees again. I forgot how long ago we had done it, but got a few different ones, and we don't highlights of boxing history today. We're going to talk about some of the top referees in the sport. Okay? So highlights of boxing history. For the show, we're just going to go back to the beginning of when boxing started way back there before the first Olympics, like 688 BC, and just come forward briefly. And then we're going to talk about some of the top boxers in the sport again, why they're the top boxers. And that's what we're going to do today. But highlights of boxing history. Let's talk about some referees. Okay? Oh, shoot. Not bad. I went back to the opening. Was running late today. Okay. Now, this is top 10 of the top boxing referees of all time. Bruce Gass, Boxing, Jazz, and more in the building. What's up, Bruce Gass? How are you today? We're going to talk about some referees till about 2:30ish. And we're going to get into the show. But boxing has some of the greatest and most memorable moments in sports history. The ref. Every great fight has a ref, which may seem like a boring job, but the referee is the man ensuring that the fight remains fair and competitive from start to finish. Now, today we will take a trip down memory lane as we dissect 10 of the top boxing referees of all time and analyze the value in the careers of each one of them. Okay? First is Kenny Bayless. Kenny Bayless. Now, Kenny Bayless is truly one of the best referees in the history of boxing. Bayless has worked some of the biggest matches ever officiated, such as De La Hoya, Floyd Mayweather, Manny Pacquiao, Juan Manuel Marquez and Mayweather and Shane Mosley, the same Marquez and Pacquiao. And he has always been in control and able to make snap judgments. That he is a deft hand at calling fights exactly when they should be and notoriously stays out of the way during fights has made Bayless highly regarded and popular with both fighters and fans. Kenny Bayless, now retired. Tony Weeks. Yeah, Bruce said 40 years ago today, the greatest rounds in boxing history. Yeah, that's funny, Bruce, because I was going to do a show on the greatest rounds tomorrow. I got the 50 greatest rounds in boxing history tomorrow. Okay. Tony Weeks. Now, Tony Weeks has a popular among boxing fans. He's popular among boxing fans for good reason. He has a tendency to allow fighters to go at it without interjecting himself unnecessarily into the fight. Most importantly, in the lightweight title fight between Jose Luis Castillo and Diego Corrales, where he let the two warriors work away on the inside in what would result in one of the greatest fights of all time. His good displays and sportsmanship have made Weeks one of the very best in the business. Tony Weeks. Steve Smoger. Mike Rim. What's up, Mike Rim? How are you today? Talking about referees again. We're just gonna do a brief thing on boxing history today. We'll talk about some of the greatest boxers of all time again, why they are the greatest and all that. But Steve Smoger, another great referee. Now, the career of referee Steve Smoger has hardly been worthwhile. What his way of giving fighters a second chances lead to is another classic, as once displayed in the fight between Powell Wolak and Delvin Rodriguez. Smoger's flexibility to adjust his refereeing to the ebb and flow of a fight has made him a revered figure in the world of boxing. Okay? He's in the International Boxing Hall of Fame and other halls of fame. His career will forever be remembered as one of the best of all time. When you're talking about referees, Steve Smolger. This is my greatest referee of all time right here. The legendary Arthur Mercante Sr. Arthur Mercante Sr. Best referee of all time, as far as I'm concerned. Greatest when it comes to referees. The impact Arthur Mercante Sr. had on the sport of boxing is beyond measure. His groundbreaking work to score appearance and break down rounds by the third to expunge the influence of last-second flurries, and his effort to scout and develop young referees to referee not speed or power, but proper angles, shows the depth of his passion for the sport of boxing. Mercante's teaching ability and his enduring influence in the training of the next generation of referees makes him a Hall of Fame boxing referee. The legendary Arthur Mercante Sr. There's another good one. Mills Lane. Mills Lane. Mills Lane's career as a boxing referee has shaped the sport and life of many, and the life of many. Lane's handling of the famous ear-biting incident has fortified his status as one of the best referees in boxing, despite that controversial moment in the Tyson-Holyfield rematch. Yeah, Mills did that fight, remember? And Mills, after the first bite, Mills let him continue because, Holyfield's corner said, it's okay, let's continue. And then Mike bit him again. Mills had no choice but to disqualify him then, right? But, his rough, no-nonsense officiating and his memorable role in so many top fights will mean that he goes down in the annals of boxing history. Mills Lane. Joe Cortez. Joe Cortez. In his illustrious career as a referee, Joe Cortez has been associated with rousing incidents and controversial calls. Now, although the man can be a bit of a love or hate figure with the fans, Cortez is a man who made a difference in the sport of boxing. The echoing tales countless have heard based on his experience and coverage of major fights from Mayweather versus Victor Ortiz have long added to the canon of combat lore. He did that crazy fight. Although he has many detractors as well, Cortez belongs in the upper echelon of boxing referees for his work in some of the sport's most iconic matchups. That would have been a tough fight for any referee. That Mayweather Victor Ortiz fight was just a strange fight. Victor Ortiz headbutted Floyd, and then he stuck out his hand to apologize, and then Floyd clocked him and knocked him out. So, wow. Tough sorting all that out for any referee. Richard Steele. Booger's not here, Daddy. This is Booger's buddy. Richard Steele. Richard Steele. Now, Richard Steele leaves a legacy as a compassionate, intelligent man who looked out for the safety of the boxers he ref. The way Taylor and Chavez were handled and the fair but firm mantra Steele attached himself to has helped the sport a great deal. Steele's uncanny ability to keep his composure and make split-second decisions inside the ropes has earned him a spot among the great referees in the history of the sport of boxing. Frank Cappuccino. Another great referee. Frank Cappuccino has been an impartial and honest referee throughout his career. The respect for his work has come from both fighters and fans, as Cappuccino has allowed fighters to fight when it was necessary, and some of his best work has come in some classic battles. Now, while you might not have anywhere near the same number of answers, the sheer fact that you are still reading, listening, and wondering probably tells you all you need to know. Cappuccino's strict dedication to quality in boxing and approach to officiating make him one of the best boxing referees of all time. And finally, last but certainly not least, Pat Russell. Last but certainly not least, Pat Russell. Pat Russell. Define Arnie One. What's up, Define Arnie One? We're just gonna touch on a little brief history of boxing and then talk about some of these great boxers again today in moments, because this is the final referee. We was talking about the referees and the highlights of boxing history segment today. Pat Russell was the last one, last but certainly not least, Pat Russell. And one of the reasons so many fans and fighters trust and rightfully respect Pat Russell is his control and quick decision-making in the ring. And Russell has put that on display time after time. In every regard, his body of work as an official speaks to his accuracy, his professionalism, to go with his long career officiating some of the most memorable fights in the history of the sport of boxing. Pat Russell. Marquez, Mayweather, Marquez Vasquez, and Marquez Diaz was a couple of the big fights he did. He was one of the best referees in the history of the sport, partly because of the fact that he actually played a part in defining it. This dedication, accuracy, and ability to make decisions in less than a second has not only raised the level of the whole sport, but also made it a better and more entertaining show for everyone. Fighters, viewers, and fans from all over the world. The careers of these referees are powerful examples of where the human tapestry of boxing is stitched, adding its thread of purpose and honor to the sport, a legacy that will forever influence and direct future referees. Okay, now we're going to talk about this. What the title is: Boxing History. Plain and simple. Boxing history. Okay, let's get started. Well, that was quick. It started late 225. The great fights this weekend. Stanionis and Raymond Ford was impressive. Entirely great card. And then we got a big one coming up next weekend. Not this weekend, but next weekend is the Ryan and Rolly. Great card. Devin and Jose Ramirez, Teofimo and Honor Barboza. That shows how great the card is, because Teofimo has headline cards. He's like number 3 on this one, the third fight down. Devin and Jose Ramirez is the co-main, and Teofimo is after them. So yeah, you can have Teofimo as the third fight on the card. Got to be a great card. I'm picking Ryan to get Rolly out of there. Rolly will run into something, namely a left hook. Eventually, yeah, because Rolly is not that defensive responsible. Swinging for the fences, leaving himself wide open. Ryan is a very good fighter and will definitely make Rolly pay for that at some point in the fight. I think he will stop him. I'll say, might not even take that long. 7. Around round 7, Ryan will stop Rolly. And Devin and Jose Ramirez could be a good fight, you know. Ramirez still has it. This is Devin's first fight after the Ryan situation, where he got badly beaten. What was he, dropped 3 times? So we'll see how he comes back from that. And Teofimo and Barboza. You always got to wonder which Teofimo is going to show up. Is it going to be the Teofimo that fought Loma or George Taylor? Or is it going to be the Teofimo that fought Sandor Martin, right? Or George Kambosos? Now, Barboza has an excellent chance of beating that Teofimo, but the Teofimo that beat Loma and Josh Taylor, I don't give Arnold Barboza much of a chance of beating that Teofimo. Love him or hate him, Teofimo is a very talented fighter. And if he has his head in the game and shows up right, he can beat anybody, any 140 pounder on any given day, you know. Love him or hate him, he's talented. You know, but you always gotta check Teofimo out and see which virgin is in the ring on any given fight. So, you know, that's next weekend though, big card. Got a good one coming from London too. I think it's the same weekend. That might be this weekend, the one I was thinking about with I think it's a great card. I don't have time to look at it right now, but we talked about it yesterday. Yeah. But let's get ready to get started. I was talking and wasn't even getting everything ready. It's Tuesday afternoon. Spring is in the air. Starting to be beautiful outside. There's some people in shorts today. It ain't that beautiful yet, but you know, some people can't wait to start taking the stuff off. Still can't take my hoodie. But let's get started with boxing history. A simple name. We're gonna go all the way back and come forward just briefly. And some good conversations about some of the great boxers, why they're considered the best in the sport right now. There we go, right there. Forgot the right one. Yeah, that's it. Come on, 2:30. 2:29. Bad luck to start before 2:30. Anything might happen. Okay, we all set. Now, what is the history of boxing? When did it turn from a sport into entertainment? And how has that change affected fighters over the years? Glad you asked. Okay, let's talk about it. Now, what are the true origins of boxing, though, in world history? Who started it, and where did it come from? Okay. Okay, Bruce says the electrician is fighting this weekend. Okay, now who started boxing, and where did it come from? Now, some historians trace modern boxing back to the ancient Greeks with the Olympic Games. But that certainly was not modern boxing in any way, shape, or form. Modern boxing, as we know it, originated in and came from Great Britain. Okay? Came from Great Britain. Now, in ancient Greece, a form of boxing was a popular amateur competitive sport that was included in the first Olympic Games. And the sport first advanced as a professional pastime by gladiators in ancient Rome, where in the gladiatorial games, boxers often wore the cestus, right? There's a cestus, wrong thing. Your boxers in the gladiatorial often wore the cestus. That's a cestus right there, okay? The cestus is a metal-studded leather hand covering. Instead of wearing boxing gloves, that's what they wore, right? A leather-studded hand covering. Unfortunately, this primitive studded glove often maimed and even killed combatants, right? Yeah, sometimes it ended up being a fight to the death. Now, the sport declined in popularity after the fall of the Roman Empire until it's revived in Europe, primarily in Great Britain. Okay? Primarily in Great Britain. Yeah, that's the old cestus. Okay? Now, in the 18th century, boxing was revived in London in the form of bare knuckles fighting. Okay? Bare knuckle prize fights in which the contestants fought for money and the spectators made wagers on the outcome of the fight. Now, the British nobility adopted boxing as a part of sporting life during Regency England. A British set of nobility calling themselves Corinthians adopted a lifestyle defined by sport, including the manly art of self-defense. Okay? Bartley defines a Corinthian as a gentleman sportsman who rides his own horses on the turf or sails his own yacht, a member of the Pugilistic Club, Bond Street in London. Now, the Pugilistic Club formed in 1814 as the meeting place of the aristocratic sporting element, often called the fancy. Now, boxing matches were commonly held at Fives Court on St. Martin Street. Boxers such as John Jackson owned both gyms and clubs, which the Corinthians frequented. Indeed, Jackson opened the Bond Street School of Arms at number 13. Jackson, known as the Gentleman or Gentleman Jackson, was friends with such notables as Lord Byron, the poet, supposedly when chided with keeping such low born company. Byron insisted that Jackson's manners are infinitely superior to those of the fellows of the college whom I meet at the high table. Now, the earliest accepted boxers in the sport we know were all centered in Great Britain. Okay? All centered in Great Britain. Tom Cribb, Tom Molyneux, Daniel Mendoza, and John Gentleman Jackson all were prize fighters in a sport related to boxing today, decades before Queensberry rules. And all these men, plus Figg and Broughton, are in the Hall of Fame. James Figg, Jack Broughton, Tom Molyneux, Tom Cribb, Daniel Mendoza, John Jackson. They were all bare knuckles boxers and all in the Hall of Fame. Okay? Now, the first known modern fist fight for money happened in Great Britain 344 years ago. On January 6, 1681, the first recorded prize fighting match in the modern sense of the word took place in Great Britain when the Duke of Albemarle, Christopher Monk, organized a fight between his butler and his butcher, with the butcher winning a cash prize from the Duke. If I had to bet on that one, I would have bet on the butcher. You know, the butcher and the butler. Yeah, I would have bet on the butcher to win it. And the butcher did win it. Okay? Now, early boxing had no written rules. There were no weight classes, round limits, and no referees. We're back. Sorry about that. This Wi-Fi, man. Okay. Oh, man. Okay, everybody hear me? Okay, let's get back to where we were at. Sorry about that. Wi-Fi acting up again. Okay, let's continue. Okay, yeah, this is where we were. Okay, we're back. Now, like I was saying, the first time boxing had a recognized champion was 1719 in Great Britain. Okay. And that champion was James Figg. Okay. Here's James Figg. He was the first recognized champion in boxing. Okay. If somebody can, if you can hear me, somebody give me a thumbs up, please. Oh shoot, I don't even know if we're back yet. Okay, let me check. Excuse me for a minute. Let me know if you can hear me. Okay. Am I good? Okay, thank you. Okay, let's continue. Like everybody left, but let's continue. Sorry about that. Okay, yeah. Okay, thank you. Now, the first time boxing had a recognized champion was 1719 in Great Britain, James Figg. There's James Figg right there. Now, James Figg, born around 1695 in Thame, Oxfordshire, was a British bare knuckle boxer who was the sport's first recognized champion. Okay? Figg fought his first fights in Oxfordshire. He fought his early prize fights there until he came to the attention of the Earl of Peterborough, who brought Figg to London. And in 1719, Figg started his own school and training grounds in an amphitheater in Tottenham Court in London. And in the school, Figg taught boxing, fencing, and quarterstaff or cudgel fighting. By the end of 1719, he was recognized as the champion of England. All-around fighting man, as he was additionally an expert at wrestling, fencing, swordplay, and fighting with cudgels. Jack Dempsey, who became champion in the 1920s, said that James Figg was the father of modern boxing. Okay? Now, the first written document discussing boxing as a sport appeared in Great Britain in 1713. The first actual written record of boxing as a sport was published by a successful Cornish wrestler from Bunyip, Cornwall, named Sir Thomas Parkins. Parkins wrote in 1713, okay? Boxing earned a single solitary page in his extensive wrestling and fencing manual that detailed a system of headbutting, punching, eye gouging, chokes, and hard throws, which are all obviously outlawed in modern boxing, but you could do all that stuff around that time in boxing, choking, you could throw the man on the ground, you could do all kinds of stuff, eye gouging, all that was legal. Now this guy, Jack Broughton, okay, that's him. He trained under James Figg and carried on Figg's legacy, both as a teacher and a fighting man, teacher and a fighter. Yep, Broughton carried on, came behind Figg. Broughton's clear intention was to protect fighters from crippling and deaths in the prize ring. Under the Broughton rules, if a man went down and could not continue after a count of 30 seconds, the fight was over. Okay? So he came in and changed some rules, tried to make it a little bit safer. Striking a fighter who was down or grappling below the waist were barred for the first time. Broughton is also credited with inventing the first boxing glove called mufflers. Okay, yes, those were the first boxing gloves called mufflers. Okay? These were a form of padded gloves which were used in training and exhibitions. It was still bare knuckles during the actual fights, but these mufflers were used in training and exhibition fights, okay? Invented by Jack Broughton. 95 years after Broughton, 187 years ago, today, the London Prize fighting rules came into being. Okay? The London Prize ring rules were a list of boxing rules created in 1838 and revised in 1853. These rules were based on the Broughton rules by Jack Broughton in 1743. Essentially, they are merely a revised version of the Broughton rules. Now, the Marquis of Queensberry rules came into effect 157 years ago. Now, the Queensberry rules were actually written by John Chambers, the respected athlete and sportsman, and endorsed by the British nobleman, the Marquis of Queensberry. That's basically the rules that govern that boxing goes by now. Basically, Queensberry rules, right? They were endorsed by the Marquis of Queensberry. The rules mandated the use of gloves in boxing fights. They stipulated only the forefists could be employed to strike with, and the fight must now be a stand-up match. No throwing or continuation on the ground, as had been common practice earlier before the Queensberry rules and the Broughton rules. No wrestling, throwing, striking, or kicking, with fixed rounds of 3 minutes, with 1 minute of rest, and only 3 men in the ring, the two fighters and the referee. Okay? So that was basically the rules that boxing have now, with a little bit of fine tuning. Okay? Now, published in 1867, the Queensberry rules began to be followed from then on. So bare knuckles fights continued to this day. Okay? We still got bare knuckles right now. But the Queensberry rules mandated that gloves be used. Okay? Now, just as the London Prize ring rules had been a revision of the Broughton rules, the Queensberry rules were just a further revision. Okay? So now we start moving up toward more modern times. Jack Dempsey was the first champion of the modern sanctioning era. Okay, there's Jack. Yes, Jack Dempsey was the first champion recognized formally by law. The New York State Athletic Commission was founded in 1916 by the New York legislature and took over sanctioning boxing in 1920 when the Walker Law in New York legalized prize fighting. The National Boxing Association, NBA, was subsequently established in 1921 by other U.S. states, through either their legislatures or by executive fiat to counter the influence of the New York State Athletic Commission. Okay? Now, the NBA is today the WBA, or the World Boxing Association, the oldest of the sanctioning bodies in boxing, the four major ones. The WBA is the oldest. The NBA officially changed its name and became the WBA on August 23rd, 1962. That was due to boxing was starting to become more international. So the NBA changed from the National Boxing Association to the World Boxing Association, officially on August 23rd, 1962. Okay? That's when that happened. Now, the first officially recognized and sanctioned heavyweight title fight was Jack Dempsey versus Georges Carpenter. That was 1921. Dempsey, all those other fights, Jack Johnson and Jess Willard and all those people, they weren't officially sanctioned by an official sanctioning body, okay? They were just promoters put them together and they fought, okay? First officially recognized sanctioned heavyweight title fight was Jack Dempsey versus George Carpenter, 1921. That was the first $1 billion gate, remember? Now, Dempsey is the first undisputed champion because he was the first champion to be accepted universally as champion, where rules were in place to force fights with mandatory contenders, etc. Now, the first government sanctioning body was in the United States. The concept of sanctioning bodies began with the New York State Legislature when in 1916 it created the New York State Athletic Commission, the NYSAC, the first of its kind in the world. Okay? Now, the New York State Athletic Commission was founded in 1916 by the New York Legislature and took over sanctioning boxing in 1920 when the Walker Law in New York legalized prize fighting. Now, the first non-government sanctioning body, the National Boxing Association, came into being to counter the New York State Athletic Commission. Today, there are 4 universally recognized official sanctioning organizations, okay? The 4 are what's my place? The WBA, founded as the National Boxing Association, okay? The WBA was the first non-government sanctioning body. The first entity to sanction as a business is the National Boxing Association, which was subsequently established in 1921 by other U.S. states through either their legislatures or by executive fiat to counter the influence of the first official government body to regulate boxing, the New York State Athletic Commission. The NBA is today the World Boxing Association. Then the WBC, the World Boxing Council, was next. The rival World Boxing Council was initially established by 11 countries: the United States, Puerto Rico, Argentina, the United Kingdom, France, Mexico, the Philippines, Panama, Chile, Peru, Venezuela, and Brazil. On February 14th, 1963, Valentine's Day, 1963. Founded in Mexico City, today the WBC remains headquartered in Mexico City. Next came the IBF, the International Boxing Federation. Okay? That was the third sanctioning body to come into being. Okay, Just Do Boxing is in the building. What's up, Just Do? Just doing a little boxing history today. Little review of boxing history. But salute Just Do Boxing coming up at 4 p.m. Okay, now the International Boxing Association, or the IBF, was the third sanctioning body to come into being. The IBF became the third non-government sanctioning body in 1983. The International Boxing Federation, formerly the United States Boxing Association, or the USBA, is a regional championship organization that came into existence in 1983 at the WBA's annual convention. Now, this is what happened. At the WBA's annual convention held in Puerto Rico, 1983, Robert W. Bobby Lee Sr., president of the USBA, was trying to become president of the WBA, but he lost in the voting, right? So him and some others walked out of Lee got mad and got some people to walk out of the convention with him and decided to form the IBF, a third organization, because he couldn't become president of the WBA. He said, I'm going to be president of something. So him and some other people formed the IBF. And Lee became the president of that. Had a huge scandal in the 90s, too. Actually went to prison. Bob Father, Don King, all was mixed up in it. The Bob Father went to court and sang like a bird. Don King didn't talk, but the Bob Father did. He admitted that he was paying the IBF money for favorable rankings for his fighters. Some of his fighters get certain championship fights. The Bob Father admitted all that. And if he was doing it in the 90s, he's doing it in 2025, okay? So anyway, finally, the WBO, the World Boxing Organization, was the fourth and final of the big four that was formed. The World Boxing Organization, known as the WBO, came into being after a group of Puerto Rican and Dominican promoters walked out of the 1988 WBA annual convention in Venezuela over disputes regarding what rules should be applied in title fights, right? And they walked out and they formed the fourth one, the WBO, 1988. Now, modern boxing originated 344 years ago in Great Britain and continues to be a dominant place in the sport today, 2025, okay? So now let's look at some of these boxers, some of these top boxers. Never talk about the top boxers too much, okay? We're gonna talk about why they're some of the greatest boxers. Well, talk about some of the greatest boxers and why they are at the top of the sport. Okay. Let's get that going. Tuesday afternoon, still early in this big week of boxing history. Tomorrow, we got 50 of the greatest rounds in boxing history. 50 of the greatest rounds in boxing history coming up tomorrow. Okay? So don't miss that. That should be good. Nope, that's not what I want. Okay, this is what I want right here. Right here. Who are considered the greatest boxers of all time? And why? Okay? And why? Again, glad you asked. Let's talk about it. Glad y'all asked. Thank you for the question. And all that. But here we go. Now you could make a list of the 250 greatest boxers of all time, and there will still be some people left off the list. So But Stanley Ketchel, old school. Stanley Ketchel. Now, kicking off the list is one Stanley Ketchel, a truly outstanding world champion who was sadly murdered at the age of 24. He was a Polish American who was born in Michigan. Ketchel was nicknamed the Michigan Assassin and became. He defended his title 11 times in 3 years. He was busy, and he stepped up to the heavyweight division for a legendary fight against Jack Johnson. Johnson was 35 pounds heavier than Ketchel, but the assassin still knocked Johnson down before eventually losing the fight. He was shot and killed less than a year later. He went from middleweight and got there with Jack Johnson. He lost, but he knocked Jack down. Yes, he did. Put Jack on his hind parts. Bet y'all haven't heard that in a while, hind parts. It's the part behind you, right? Joe Calzaghe. Now, Calzaghe has been criminally underrated by much of the world. One need only look at his record to see what an outstanding fighter he really was. Calzaghe fought 46 times, winning every single one of those fights. 32 of them by knockout. Okay, 32 by knockout. Probably like 70 something. No, 69.5%. Okay. But, 46 wins, 32 by knockout for Joe Calzaghe. Okay. Now, he was super middleweight world champion for over 10 years and over an entire decade. But it was broken up in between a couple. It wasn't just one decade straight. It was like in the middle of one to the middle of another one. Okay. And that's the record for middleweight, though. Over 10 years. He defended his title 21 times and only relinquished the title to move up in weight. Okay. Didn't get beat in the ring. Vacated to move up. Went up to he was successful in his move up to light heavyweight, where he also became world champion. His critics point to the lack of high quality of opposition, but you can only fight the man put in front of you. And Calzaghe's notable opponents include the likes of Chris Eubank, Jeff Lacey, Bernard Hopkins, and Roy Jones Jr. Okay? They were older B. Hopkins, Roy Jones, but hey, BoxRec don't say nothing about older BoxRec, just say he beat B. Hopkins, Roy Jones. But that was the knock on him. He fought lower level competition, and he wouldn't come out of the UK. I think the B. Hop Roy Jones fights were the first fights he ever fought in the United States. Define Arnie says Joe Calzaghe, top 5 most underrated fighter ever. Yeah, he's definitely one of them. Define Arnie, that is a good point. Yeah, definitely one of them. 21 title defenses. That's the middleweight record. I mean, super middleweight record, right? Over 10 years as champion. Yeah, and like I said, he don't get the recognition he deserves. Iron Mike Tyson is on here. Let's talk about Iron Mike Tyson. Y'all done heard a lot, but we're going to talk about him anyway. Now, if every boxing fan was asked to compile a list of this kind, the man who would vary the most in position is certainly Mike Tyson. Now, some wouldn't even put Mike in the top 100, while others would have him in the top 5. Now, there are points to be considered for either side for Mike. Now, when Tyson first emerged, he was a force of nature. He had incredible power and destruction in both hands. And he blew away his first 37 opponents, giving boxing a huge new wave of interest in the late 80s when it was needed, right? Along with the Four Kings. Yet, as quickly as he emerged, Tyson faded away. Holyfield and Lewis beat him, but both of them beat him convincingly. And some would claim Tyson never beat a top-class fighter in their prime, right? That's a good point. Now, Mike is still worth being on this list, right? 23rd. Okay. Yeah, he's top 25. He's top 20, not top 5, but top 25. That's a good point. He didn't beat a top level fighter in their prime in his entire career. I cannot think of one. No. Michael Spinks don't count because he was a light heavyweight. Larry Holmes was way past his prime and Mike beat him. Okay? Way past his prime. So that's a good point to think about. Big George Foreman. There's both versions of Big George. Old one. See the difference? The old one on the right looked like he ready to kill somebody, and then the one on the new one can't stop smiling. I told y'all that, people that saw both of them when they first came back, we just said that's not the same George Foreman, no way. He had a whole entirely different personality, The first George Foreman never smiled. He was the worst interview in boxing. He would get like one-word answers. The press said that he was the worst interview in the sport, right? And then when he came back, he couldn't stop talking. Couldn't stay out of front of a microphone. So we was like, that's not the same George Foreman. That's just another fighter with the same name. But it was him. He redid his image and everything, and became very popular and resurrected himself. Yeah, had that George Foreman grill. But George Foreman's life, and certainly his boxing career, can quite easily be divided into two sections, right? And I'm not talking about the 70s Foreman and the 80s and 90s Foreman. I'm talking about the pre-Ali Foreman and the post-Ali Foreman. Now, the pre-Ali Foreman lacked charisma. He seemed more machine than man, and his style was that of a lumberjack, powerfully chopping away at his opponents, using his power to send them to canvas. Now, post-Ali, Foreman was an immensely likable figure who became a beloved figure in the United States, and he returned to the sport after 10 years out to become the oldest heavyweight world champion in history, still is to this day. And Foreman's most legendary performances were his second-round destructions of Joe Frazier and Ken Norton. Yeah, just destructions. And then he beat Frazier in the 5th round, the second time, I think. But 7 rounds between Foreman and Frazier, 8 knockdowns. Foreman knocked Frazier down 8 times in 7 total rounds between them. Wow. Okay. The mongoose / old mongoose, Archie Moore. There's Archie on the left. Archie Moore. Now, Archie Moore had a quite extraordinary boxing career, taking part in 219 fights, of which he won 185 and recorded 132 knockouts. That's second most. More career knockouts than all but one fighter in history. The most is 136 by Billy somebody. I can never think of his name. Yeah, but Archie was number 2, 132 knockouts. And that's safe. Nobody will even fight 132 times anymore, much less get 132 knockouts, right? Yeah, second most in history, Archie. Now, Archie fought his first fight in 1935 and his last in 1963. That's 4 decades. 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. 28 years, okay? One of the few fighters that fought in 4 decades. First fight in 1935, last in 1963. He started fighting before there was even TV. And by the time he finished, I think, was color TV out in 63? I'm not sure. Yeah, but Archie, wow, that covers a lot happened in those 28 years during his career. And that was an indication of his incredible longevity. Archie is the longest reigning light heavyweight world champion in history. And most of his defeats came after moving up to the heavyweight division, including losses against Rocky Marciano, Floyd Patterson, and Muhammad Ali. Three huge names in the heavyweight division. Yeah. Archie Moore. International Boxing Hall of Famer. Lennox Lewis. Lennox the Lion. Now, Lennox is without doubt one of the smartest and most complete heavyweight fighters of all time. He was born in England to Jamaican parents, but he was brought up in Canada, and that's who he represented in the Olympics. But after the Olympics, he went back to the UK. Lewis won gold at both the 1986 Commonwealth Games and the 1988 Olympic Games. He quickly emerged as a top 5 world heavyweight and became world champion in 1992. Lewis's most notable wins came over Frank Bruno, Evander Holyfield, Hasim Rahman, Mike Tyson, and Vitaly Klitschko. Lewis remains the last undisputed heavyweight world champion before Alexander Usyk, right? And we could have had one between Lewis and Usyk if the Klitschkos would have fought each other, because they had all 4 belts. I think one had 3 and the other one had 1, but brothers weren't going to fight each other. But Jamel said if the money was right, he would get in there with Jamal. Jamal was like, no, I wouldn't do that. But Mel said, the money right, I'll get in there with Jamal. We still be brothers after it's over. Mickey Walker, the toy bulldog. The toy bulldog, Mickey Walker. Now, Mickey Walker is widely regarded as one of the finest boxers to have ever lived, despite having 25 career defeats to his name. Multi-talented, Walker was not only an expert in the ring, he was also an exceptional golfer and a fine artist. Yeah, versatile guy. He became the welterweight world champion in 1922, and he became the lightest man in history to challenge for the light heavyweight title. And he became middleweight champion in 1926, which he held until 1931, 5 years. The toy bulldog, Mickey Walker. Can y'all excuse me for a minute? I gotta get my something out the refrigerator. I didn't want to holler to Miss Cass to get it. Count from 60 back. Let's do 0. I'll be back. The Wi-Fi is tripping. Just once. Just once. Can we figure? Oh, I'm back. I'm sorry. I was singing on the way. Okay, I'm back. Thank you. That went got me something to drink. Okay, Mickey Walker, the toy bulldog, was last. Next is Smoking Joe Frazier. Smoking Joe Frazier. Here's Smoking Joe. Now, Joe Frazier's ability as a boxer may have been exaggerated somewhat, okay? His greatest achievement was, of course, his defeat of Muhammad Ali in 1971, but he was beaten in both the rematches and destroyed by George Foreman twice. Now, Frazier did have, without doubt, one of the most powerful and effective left hooks in boxing history, and a relentless approach, which wore down lesser opponents. But once you look past Ali, the list of fighters he beat is not as impressive as some. Now, Frazier is well worth his place on this list, but probably shouldn't be in the top 10 all time. Top 10 heavyweights, but top 10 fighters all time, no, I don't think Smoking Joe is top 10. But still a great fighter, but 18 is good for him. Yeah, all time. Now, heavyweights, about 8, something like that. Yeah. Not to try to diminish him, but we talking about all time, every weight class. I don't think Smoking Joe is top 10, but an incredible fighter. Top 10 heavyweight, though. Let me stress that. Okay. The great Jimmy Wald. It's Jimmy on the left going in. Now, from a big beast to a little beast, from Smoking Joe to Jimmy Wald. Jimmy Wald stood at just 5'2", but he had explosive power in his punches. The fighters of most weight divisions would be proud of. And he was way down there like flyweight. Okay? Yeah. Now, Wald is regarded by many to be the greatest flyweight boxer of all time and was nicknamed the Mighty Atom. He had a number of famous fights with Englishman Sid Smith, but Wald won on every occasion. Of his 139 wins, a staggering 99 were by knockout. He missed the 100 knockout club by one fight. And he was only beaten 4 times, losing the world flyweight title in his last ever fight. Okay? 139 wins, just 4 losses. Incredible. Okay? 139 wins, just 4 losses. Incredible. Yeah, that's 70% knockout rate, 99 and 139. Not bad. Floyd Mayweather Jr. clocks in at number 17. Floyd. Now, if Floyd continues to divide opinion, some critics would say that he shirked the number of fighters in order to retain his undefeated record. Some have attacked his reluctance to fight Manny Pacquiao for the longest time, when the pair were at their prime. Whatever people say about Mayweather, it still has to be said that his defense is one of the greatest in boxing history, and his record of 50 wins and no losses is worthy of respect. Now, his greatest wins were those over Oscar De La Hoya, Ricky Hatton, Miguel Cotto, Marcos Maidana, and of course, Manny Pacquiao. Okay. Next is the legendary Old Master, Joe Gans. The Old Master from Baltimore, Maryland. Joe Gans. Joe Gans was the first African-American boxing world champion and is regarded by many as the greatest lightweight boxer of all time. Now, Gans began fighting in 1891 and didn't hang up his gloves until 1909. At a time when most boxers were brutes, Gans was more of a thinker. He would weigh up his opponent in the early rounds, assessing their strengths and weaknesses and exploiting them as the fight went on. Gans fought 196 times in his career, winning 158, 100 of which were by knockout, losing 12, had 20 draws, and 6 no contests. He was world lightweight champion from 1902 until 1908. The Old Master, Joe Gans. Yep, what they called him, the Old Master. Next, the great Harry Greb. Probably the greatest middleweight of all time. Yeah, I had to put him in front of Hagler and Carlos Monzon, but it's close. It's a good discussion. Greb, arguably, I would say he is the greatest middleweight of all time. Despite dying at the age of just 32, Harry Greb managed to fight 298 times, the third most fights of any professional boxer in history. 2 more, he would have had 300. Nicknamed the Pittsburgh Windmill, due to his ability to throw punches in flurries. Greb had great power in his fists and was a very aggressive boxer who liked to mix it up a bit with his opponents. And the dark side of Greb's game was his willingness to employ dirty tactics, a willingness of which caught up with him when his opponent did likewise and blinded him in one eye, right? Now, Greb was world middleweight champion from 1923 to 1926, winning 261 fights and dying age 32 shortly after his last fight due to heart failure. He won 298 overall, 262 in the middleweight division because he fought all the way up to heavyweight. Mm-hmm. Yes, he did. Harry Greb, the great Harry Greb. Sam Langford is next. The best fighter to never win a title. Sam Langford. Never got a shot. He got his shots at the colored title, but never got a shot at the heavyweight title. I didn't know. Al Booker, what's happening, Al Booker? I didn't know Al Booker was in here. Al Booker says Marvelous Marvin Hagler was the GOAT at middleweight. Yeah, that's arguable. Mm-hmm. Hagler has to be in the conversation when you're talking. The GOAT at middleweight. No doubt about it. Hagler, Harry Greb, King Carlos Monzon, those three. I can't think of anybody else. Sugar Ray, welterweight. When it comes to middleweight, it comes down to Hagler, Carlos Monzon, and Harry Greb. Those three. Okay, yeah. Sam Langford, the greatest fighter to never win a title. Now, Sam Langford was once described by ESPN as the greatest boxer you've never heard of. But more recently, the legacy of Sam Langford has become better known. The Ring named him the second greatest puncher of all time, right? And he wasn't that big. Never weighed over 185, right? Second greatest puncher of all time. While BoxRec named Langford the fourth greatest heavyweight fighter of all time. And the reason Langford is not better known is because he never became a world champion. Jack Johnson, who was world champion at that time, refused to fight Langford, meaning the only title he held was the world colored heavyweight champion. Langford considered Joe Gans as the greatest boxer in the world, but he defeated Gans in 1903. Overall, Langford fought 256 times, losing only 32 fights out of 256. Wow. The great Sam Langford, the greatest fighter to never win a championship. Next is Jack Johnson. Speaking of Jack Johnson, almost to the top 10. Jack Johnson, the man who prevented Sam Langford from his shot at a world title. Jack Johnson has received a lot of criticism for his supposed cowardice. Despite his reluctance to give Langford a shot, Johnson does deserve a great deal of credit for his achievements and general boxing career. He was the first African-American world heavyweight champion at a time when racial tensions in the United States was perhaps at its most intense. Angered by the dominance of a black boxer, sections of white Americans persuaded the undefeated James Jeffries out of retirement to take on Johnson. Jeffries' corner threw in the towel in the 15th round. Next, the hands of stone. Roberto Duran. Roberto almost hit the top 10. We're at number 11. Roberto number 11. Now, it is rare for Roberto Duran to miss out on lists of this not in the top 10, right? He was named the 5th greatest fighter of the last 80 years by the Ring magazine and the 8th greatest boxer of all time by Bert Sugar. Duran is one of the 2 boxers to have had a career spanning 5 decades, along with Jack Johnson. Yep, 5 decades. Let's see, Johnson fought 90s, 2000s, 2010s, 2020s, 2020s, and 1880s and the 1890s. And Duran was 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s. 2 fighters fought in 5 decades, yeah. Now, Manny is the only one to win titles in 4 decades, Manny Pacquiao. Duran and Johnson didn't win titles in all 5 of those decades, but they fought in all 5 of them. Now, having made his boxing debut in 1968, Duran fought his last fight in 2001. Nicknamed the Hands of Stone, Duran threw hard and consistent punches. He was a savage, a warrior, and a monster in the ring, but he was also a good boxer and had good defense too. He held world titles in 4 weight divisions: lightweight, welterweight, junior middleweight, and middleweight. Okay, at number 10 is Sugar Ray Leonard. Sugar Ray Leonard. That Booger says, didn't Jack Johnson die at like 40 years old? Yeah, he was in a car accident. He was a notoriously fast driver, always speeded. Yeah, car accident killed him. About that, around there, early 40s. I don't know the exact age, Al Booger. It might have been 45. I know it was early to mid 40s. Yeah, car accident. And the story goes, he could have lived, but the nearest hospital wouldn't admit him because he was black. He had to go to a hospital further away, and by the time he got there, he had passed away. I don't know if he had passed by the time he got to the hospital, but they said if he would have got treatment sooner, he would have lived. But that first hospital turned him away because of his race. So he would have lived. Well, he would have been dead by now, but yeah, he would have lived past that young age, 40s, if he could have got treatment at that hospital. But that was the life back then. So yeah, it is what it is. But anyway, did we do Sugar Ray Leonard? No. Sugar Ray Leonard was named the boxer of the decade for the 1980s. And he had an exceptional career, winning world titles in 5 weight divisions. He won gold at the 1976 Olympic Games in Montreal, Canada. He was the first boxer to make $100 million from purses. Now, Sugar Ray should have retired with only 1 career defeat to Roberto Duran, but instead came out of retirement 2 times, looking a shadow of his scintillating best on both occasions, resulting in a career total of 40 fights, 36 wins, 3 losses, and 1 draw. Who was it? Davey Moore and Hector Camacho, right? Those other 2, where he should have been retired. That Duran loss should have been his only loss. Stayed around too long, like many of them do. Number 9, Jack Dempsey, the Manasseh Mauler, Jack Dempsey. Now, Jack Dempsey was immensely popular in the United States throughout the 1920s and was the face of the sport, which was at the time arguably the most popular sport in the United States, right up there with baseball, right? Handsome, charismatic, and a very hard and fast hitter. Dempsey was loved by men and women alike. Now, the Associated Press even named Dempsey the greatest fighter of the last 50 years. Now, Dempsey fought 83 times, winning 65, losing 6, and having 11 draws. They only had a lot of draws back then. Dempsey was world heavyweight champion from 1919 to 1926. What's that? 7 years. Number 8, Rocky Marciano, The Rock. The Rock. Yeah, Dempsey was great, Al Booger, yeah. And he was the one that, when boxing first became popular in the 20s, he was the one that put it on the map, Jack Dempsey. He was the most popular athlete in the United States. More popular than Babe Ruth, Bill Tilden in tennis, and the golfer Bobby Jones, Red Grange, the football player, all legends. Jack Dempsey was more popular than all of them. The boxer, one of the big 5 of sports. That's what they called those guys. And Jack Dempsey was the most popular of all. Number 8, Rocky Marciano. Now, Rocky's detractors point to the fact that the heavyweight division was not at its strongest when Marciano dominated the division from 1947 to 1955, but he still beat everybody. He had an exceptionally short boxing career for someone at his level. Yet, Marciano still defeated Joe Louis, Jersey Joe Walcott, and Archie Moore when nobody else was beating them. Jersey Joe Walcott was the world champion when he beat him, so How can you say that was beating somebody not at the best at their best? He was world champion, so wasn't nobody else beating him, right? So that's a crazy argument there when people say he beat Jersey Joe Walcott, who was not in his prime. He was world champion. How much more prime you get than that? Damn, that's a crazy argument there. That actually sounds stupid. He beat the world heavyweight champion. Somebody can say, well, he wasn't at his prime when he beat Jersey Joe. The man was a world champion. That's actually a stupid argument, man. I wouldn't even argue with somebody that says that. Because in the words of the great Roger Mayweather, they don't know shit about boxing. The man beat the world champion. How can that be beating a lesser opponent? Nobody else was doing it. But yeah, that gets me heated when people talk about Rocky like that, man. You know, it's crazy. What was he supposed to say? Jersey Joe's world champion. I'm gonna wait till a younger person win it before I go for it. Get that out of here, man. That's stupid. But Rocky had an exceptionally short boxing career for someone at his level. Yet, I read he beat Joe Louis, Jersey Joe, and Archie Moore when nobody else was beating him. Joe Louis was the number one ranked contender when Rocky beat him. And they didn't just give you that in those days. You had to beat fighters to earn that ranking, okay? Number one ranked contender. Archie Moore, after Rocky beat Archie had 30 more fights and only lost one of them. And like I said, Jersey Joe Walcott was the damn world champion when Rocky beat him, so don't even need to mention that. So how is that fighting lesser fighters? Huh? But anyway, Marciano's record speaks for itself. He's the only heavyweight world champion to have gone his entire career undefeated, and he has the highest knockout percentage of any heavyweight world champion, 88%. He ended his career with a record of 49 fights, 49 wins, 43 knockouts. The Rock. Yeah, defied Arnie. I don't know what they're talking about. He fought weak competition. He fought grown-ass men that was in there throwing punches at his head, man. Shit. I don't call that weak at all, you know? And Rocky never weighed over 200 a day in his life, right? Would have been a cruiserweight nowadays. That's why they made cruiserweight after Rocky was gone for people like him and Joe Frazier, because heavyweights were getting bigger and bigger, and they said it's not fair for these guys weighing 200, right around 200 or under 200, fighting these big monsters. So they created cruiserweight, but they didn't have that when Rocky and Joe Frazier fought. They had to fight at heavyweight. Number 7, the great Benny Leonard, the ghetto wizard. Benny Leonard, the ghetto wizard. Yeah, hell of a fighter, Al Booker. Yeah. But Al Booker, Joe Louis was the number one contender for the heavyweight title. And they didn't just give you that back then. You had to beat fighters to earn that. So what I'm saying is nobody else was beating him. He fought his way to the number one contendership. So, you know, it was the case Rocky was beating who was put in front of him. He can't help the type of fighters that was fighting at that time. And nobody else was beating Joe Louis. He was the number one contender. And I repeat, back in them days, they just didn't give you that. You didn't just jump from 25 to 1 all of a sudden. You had to earn it back then. You had to beat other top 10 contenders. And Joe Louis did that, right? He was the number one contender. Rocky just didn't beat the number 15th ranked contender. Joe Louis was the top number one contender heavyweight at the time when Rocky beat him. And he beat the other top heavyweights of the day to earn that ranking, okay? So if he was a shell of himself, wasn't nobody else beating him. That's all I'm saying. Nobody else was doing it. The man was the number one contender. So yeah, I don't understand that, man. Like nowadays, you can say that because nowadays a guy get a championship fight with 2 fights. But they didn't do that back then. If you was the number one contender, you earned it. Okay, you beat other top contenders. Or you wouldn't be the number one contender. That's just how it was back then. It wasn't like this era, this weak nonsense going on now is. Like I said, you got prospects with 6 fights with 2 belts over their shoulders. 20 champions in each division. It wasn't weak like that back then. You had 1 champion in each division, okay? Nobody was given anything. You earned everything you got back then. Not like now. But Benny Leonard, the ghetto whistle, the longest reigning lightweight champion of all time. Benny Leonard was born out of a Jewish Manhattan slum and began fighting on the street. Leonard became lightweight champion in 1917, retiring as champion in 1925. Having lost almost his entire fortune to the 1929 stock market crash, Leonard was forced into making a return to the ring 7 years after his retirement. Now, following his return, he won 18 of his next 19 fights, losing his last fight to fellow Hall of Famer Jimmy McLaurin. Leonard is remembered as one of the finest all-around boxers of all time, who had quick feet, a solid defense, and explosive power in his punch. And one more thing on that situation, I'm going to leave it alone. 70% Joe Louis back then was good enough to beat any other heavyweight except Rocky. Joe Louis at 70%, not at his best, was good enough to beat everybody in the heavyweight division at that time except Rocky Marciano, because he was the number 1 contender. And then let's move on from that. Sonny Liston, Sonny Liston. Is number 6, right? It's Sonny's number 6. There he is. Now, probably one of the most controversial figures in boxing history. Sonny is a criminally underrated heavyweight fighter who has been terribly hard done by history. He was a very shady character, and he never endeared himself to the public, much in the way of Ali or Foreman did, but that should not detract from his boxing prowess. He annihilated top-class fighters like Cleveland Williams and Floyd Patterson, often within a single round. He lost the first fight to Ali, having done very little training, incurring an injury, and most likely through the second fight. It is worth remembering that Liston may have been as old as 45 by the second Ali fight. Now, at his best, Liston was the complete heavyweight boxer, and he shouldn't merely be remembered as the guy Ali knocked out when Liston was twice his age. Yeah, but that's what he's remembered as, because that's what a lot of people know about Sonny Liston was. He lost to Ali, right? That's what many people know. Most boxing fans up today, all they know about Sonny Liston, the man that lost to Ali, but a great champion, man. Sonny Liston was great. Yeah. Willie Pep. Willie Pep. Willie Pep. Widely considered the greatest featherweight boxer of all time, Willie Pep was a 2-time world featherweight champion. His career spanned 26 years, in which time Pep fought 241 times, winning 229, losing 11, and 1 draw. He was a record made all the more impressive when one considers that Pep was seriously injured in a plane crash in 1947, midway through his career. Legend has it that Pep, the only man in history to have won a round of boxing without throwing a punch. And he is best remembered for his bewildering speed, quick feet, and remarkable defense. Willie Pep. Harry Armstrong is number 4. There he is, Homicide Hank. Number 4. Great champion. His main work was done in the 30s when he was champion in 3 divisions, when there was only 8 divisions. Okay, he was champion in 3 of them. That's equivalent to being about champion in like 9 of them nowadays. And he was champion at lightweight, 126, and welterweight 147 at the same time, 21 pounds apart, defending both belts at the same time. Now he was defending welterweight, fighting like under 140. You don't have to be 147 as long as you're under it. That's all that the requirement is. He probably never fought at welterweight above 140 pounds. But he was winning. Homicide Hank. Okay. Now, Henry Armstrong was a world champion in 3 different weight divisions at a time when there were only 8 weight divisions. Even more remarkable than this, Armstrong held all 3 titles at the same time. He remains the only man to have ever done this. Armstrong became featherweight champion in 1937, welterweight champion in 1938, and lightweight champion in 1938. He faced a staggering 17 world champions over the course of his career and beat 15 of them. Fought 30 times in 1938, and then I think he fought 40 times in 2 years, something like that. I would have to check it, but yeah, just incredible. Joe Louis, the Brown Bomber. There's the bomber, Joe Louis. Now, Joe Louis is one of the titans of boxing history. He became an American hero, particularly among the African-American community, for his rise from a poor family of 8 kids to international superstar. Now, Lewis's first major fight came against Max Baer, who had already killed a man in the ring. But Lewis won by knockout in 4 rounds. That's him and Max Baer, the first fight in the opening, where he had him pinned in the corner and just teeing off on him. And his first loss came against the German Max Schmeling. And he became heavyweight champion of the world in 1937 and beat Schmeling 2 years later in the fight of the decade. He remained world heavyweight champion until his retirement, having held the position for over 11 years and defending his title 25 times, a record in any weight division. Okay? He held it until 1942? No. He held it throughout the 40s. 1949, right? Mm-hmm. Sugar Ray Robinson, number 2. Sugar Ray Robinson. Okay. Rusty Cage, Jarrell Hattie, Ken Saw Love 1, all in the building. What's happening? Good to see y'all today. Ken Saw Love 1, Jarrell Hattie, and Rusty Cage. Salute. We did some boxing, looked at the history of boxing today, and now some of the great fighters and why they were great. Okay? So let's finish it off. We were at number 2, the Brown Bomber, Joe Louis. No, Sugar Ray Robinson was number 2, right? Now, as alluded to earlier, it is precisely because of the prowess of Sugar Ray Robinson in the middleweight division that the need for a pound-for-pound system came into being. He is regarded by many as the greatest pound-for-pound boxer to have ever lived. He became welterweight world champion in 1946, a title he held for 5 years until stepping up to the middleweight division, where he became world champ once more. And that middleweight division in the 50s, one of the best periods ever for middleweight boxing in the 50s. The names. Carmen Basilio, Sugar Ray, Jake LaMotta, Randy Turpin, Dick Tiger. Did I say Randy Turpin? Yeah, just some great middleweights in those 50s. Gene Fullmer. The 50s was loaded when it came to middleweight. Arguably the greatest decade of all for middleweights. Now, Sugar Ray attempted to step up to light heavyweight, but he found it too much. He was, what happened was the heat got him. He was leading on the cards in round 13, but the heat exhausted. He couldn't continue. And before he went down to the heat, they had to change referees because of the heat. Yeah, so that was the only time he was stopped. Excuse me, only time he was stopped in his career because of heat exhaustion. After round 13, he couldn't continue. Now, he is regarded by many as the best pound-for-pound boxer. Okay, my bad. He is widely regarded as the most complete fighter of all time, right? He lost only one of his first 123 fights against Jake LaMotta, who he then beat 5 times. After being utterly dominant in the welterweight division, he was still successful at middleweight, becoming the first boxer to win a division title 5 times. But like Carmen Vasilio said, you had to lose it 4 times. Yeah, Carmen was hate. Okay, number 1, of course, is Muhammad Ali. My greatest for this month. Okay. Muhammad Ali. Now, there's been an attempt recently to rewrite the history books to somehow diminish the legacy of Muhammad Ali by some. It seems to have become cool or quirky to claim that Ali is or was overrated. It may be cliche and it may be obvious, but Ali thoroughly deserves top spot on any greatest, best of all time list. He is the greatest boxer of all time. There's never been a heavyweight fighter who moved like Ali. In his early days, when he was known as Cassius Clay, Ali's claims that he could dance around his opponents were only part humoring. At that stage of his career, he really did dance around his opponents. Just take a look at his fight against Cleveland Williams in 1966, if you don't believe it. Now, the Ali of that time was the greatest heavyweight boxer to have lived. He was suspended at the age of 25, arguably at his best, and didn't return to this ring until he was almost 29. His first defeat came at the hands of Joe Frazier, who he beat convincingly in the, well, not convincingly, but he beat him in the 2 rematches. Okay, they were all good fights. Ken Norton was the only other man to beat Ali before the regrettable final few years of his career when he should have been out of the ring. Now Ali fought in the toughest weight division during his golden era and emerged the greatest. His list of defeated opponents include Henry Cooper, Sonny Liston, Floyd Patterson, Joe Frazier, Ken Norton, Ernie Shavers, Ron Lyle, and Big George Foreman. Despite losing his finest years to their suspension, Ali simply came back, adjusted his style, and started winning all over again. And he remains the only 3-time heavyweight. No, him and Holyfield. He's one of the 3. Holyfield won it 4 times. Ali is one of the 2 3-time heavyweight champions in history to win the title 3 times. Muhammad Ali and Evander Holyfield. Yeah, only 2 has done that. Okay, so tomorrow we got 50 of the greatest rounds in boxing history. Okay, Wednesday. So join me then. Another show of boxing history. And then Thursday is Utah. The Boxing in the State series continues Thursday with Utah. And the Profile Friday is one of the 4 kings of the 2000s. Manny Pacquiao, Juan Manuel Marquez, Marco Antonio Barrera, and who was the other one? That's the Profile Friday. Eric Morales, yeah. The life and career of Eric Morales Friday. Yeah, that's the profile, right? Yeah. Eric Morales. Yeah, we're running out of time now, so yeah. The life and career of Eric Morales Friday, great boxer. one of the 2000s Four Kings, Eric, along with Pacquiao, Barrera, and Marquez. They had 13 fights between them. The only matchup between all of those that didn't happen was Marquez and Barrera. All the other ones happened, right? And yeah, they fought more than the original Four Kings. I think they had 9, but they had a few trilogies in between those 4 to 2000s. They had a few trilogies, rematches. Mm-hmm. But Marquez and Barrera never fought. That's hard to believe, but they never did. And they finally were in talks in 2011, but it didn't come to fruition. Nothing came of it. They couldn't iron out the talks. Yeah, we covered that yesterday. Big fights that didn't happen. Remember? And we got some that big card next weekend. Ryan Garcia and Rolly with Devin and Jose Ramirez, Teofimo and Ana Barboza. We got to see which Teofimo shows up. You know, like I said, the Teofimo that fought Loma, Josh Taylor shows up. I don't give Barboza much of a chance. But the Teofimo that fought Kambosos or Sandor Martin, when he was questioning whether he still had it, give Barboza an excellent chance of winning that one. But we had to see which Teofimo shows up to the party. And you know that's a great card because Teofimo has headline cards. He's like the number 3 fight on that card. You know, Ryan and Rolly headlining, and Devin and Ramirez is the co-main, and Teofimo is behind them. So that has to be a great card. We got a great one this weekend, too. I think it's in London. I think it's this weekend. I think Gabriela Fondora, I think that's this weekend, too. Let me check. Well, we got a few minutes left in today's show to check it out. Anthony Yard and Lyndon Arthur. That's the guy that fought Bivol last year. That fight is on the card. Josh Warrington back in action. I thought Josh had retired. Dirty Josh Warrington. Hitting people all behind the head and elbows and headbutting. Josh knows every trick of the trade. Yeah, Orlando, Florida. Wait a minute. What is this weekend day? 19th? Yeah. We got a card Friday, too. From Orlando, Florida. Then the 19th is, Gabriela Fondora is this week. Oceanside, California. But the card I was talking about was, I don't know if that's this weekend or not. Yeah, it is this weekend. Ben Whitaker headlining against, it's the 20th, that's Sunday. Liam Cameron. We got Lee Cutler versus Sam Eggleston. We got Frazier Clark, Tyler Denny. No, I'm thinking about the one next weekend. The Chris Eubanks and Connor Ben card. Yeah, that is next weekend, not this weekend, next weekend. Eubanks and Ben. We got Liam Smith and Aaron McKenna, Anthony Yard, Lyndon Arthur, Chris Billiam-Smith, Brandon Glanton, Vidal Riley versus Siobhan Clark. And I thought Josh Warrington was on that card too. Josh is on one of them. And then May 2nd, that's like a couple weeks away from this weekend, Ryan and Rolly. I'm going with Ryan in that one. I think Ryan will probably stop him. You saw Marquez and Morales live? No, Marquez and Barrera never happened. He fought Morales. Marquez and Barrera didn't happen, Define Arnie. Yeah, he fought Morales. Yeah. Marquez and Barrera fought. Let's see. We got 5 minutes. Yeah, I know there was one matchup in that series that didn't happen. We talked about it yesterday. I forgot what it was. Let me check on it. Come on, thing. This Uncle Jump. We got 5 minutes, and then Just Do Boxing is up at 4 p.m. Oh, come on. I'm trying to get the box rack. There it is. There it is. Okay, box rack. I got Knox rack. Oh my goodness. Now I don't have enough nothing. There we go. Juan Manuel Marquez. That's who we're talking about, right? What does that say? Morales. Barrera. Yes, Juan Manuel looking mean. Okay. Yeah. Tim Bradley. He lost to Tim Bradley. Wow. You know he fought Manny 4 times. Yeah. Okay, but he did beat Barrera. Let me see. I got that. Where's the book at? Is this it right here? I got it right here in front of me. Or was that Monday? Or was that yesterday's show? I think that was Monday when we did the one on the fights that didn't happen. I can't even remember now. Yeah, that was Monday. Let me pull that real quick. I got it written down. Monday. Okay, Monday was the 12th, right? We may give up in a minute. There we go. Ricardo Lopez, Lennox Lewis, Johnny Tapia. I can't find it. As soon as I go off the air, I'm gonna find it. I'm giving up. Oh, no, that's Prince Nassim Hamed. Okay, let's get ready to get out of here. I give up. I can't find it. Murphy's Law. Oh, Marquez and Morales. Yeah, not Barrera. Morales. Sorry about that. Wrong name. Yeah, Eric Morales. Yeah, Marquez beat Barrera. Yeah, it was Morales. Eric Morales. Yeah. Okay. So let's get ready to call it a day. Let me check box record again though. Yeah, no Eric Morales. Yeah, that was the only matchup that didn't happen in that between those four was Marquez and Morales. Defon Arnie once says, I'm excited to see if Chris Billiard-Smith can bounce back from the Zerto beating. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good, that'll be interesting. Yeah, I meant Morales, Defon Arnie. Because we went over it Monday, remember? I just got my names mixed up. I had to go check my notes. It was Morales, right? Yeah. The only matchup out of those four that didn't happen was Marquez and Morales. All the other possible combinations happened, including Marquez and Barrera. Yep, that one happened. It was Morales. Yeah. But they were in talks in 2011, but they didn't come to fruition. Didn't work out. But everybody else fought everybody else. Okay, but I appreciate everybody for coming through today. Tomorrow we're going to have the 50 of the greatest rounds in boxing history. 50 of the greatest rounds in boxing history tomorrow. Okay? But thank you, Defon Arnie, for that information. Yeah. 50 of the greatest rounds in boxing history tomorrow. Okay? So join me then. Rusty Cage, Jarrell Hattie, Ken Saul Love 1, Al Booger, Just Do Boxing, Define Arnie 1, Mike Rim, Bruce Gas, Boxing Jazz, and more. The Boxing Mania Podcast Plus, Mike Mazik, Miss Cass. Appreciate everybody for stopping by today. Don't miss tomorrow, the 50 greatest rounds in boxing history. That's what we'll be talking about on tomorrow's show. Because if it's Monday through Friday, 2 p.m., it's the Boxtorian bringing you all that boxing history. Just Do Boxing is up at 4 o'clock p.m. Probably might be live now. This is Cass Sports. Appreciate y'all. See y'all around the YouTube streets.